An exciting day. So in the beginning, humans were created intelligent, and then they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and they learned morality. Nowadays, man is trying to create machines in its own image, endowing them with artificial intelligence, and the question is, how do we also imbue them with a computational notion of morality? At the first plenary session, Wendy Hall discussed the question of AI and challenged us to deal with the ethical issues, the legal issues, and accountability issues. And I would think that in order to achieve accountability, what we need is transparency. If we want our AI systems to comply with our notions of morals, then we need the morals to be transparent, the laws to be transparent, available, understandable, both to man and to machine, and similarly for the algorithms to be transparent and understandable both to women and machines. So talking first about transparent ethics. Okay, back in the 70s, I was at Stanford, and there was this autonomous car driving around, and we progressed a little bit. Imagine one of these years, we just heard 5 to 20 years, the autonomous car will pass the driving test and will be allowed on the road. Well, actually, the driving test usually has two components. A road test, where you see if the car can drive, that will happen, and a written test, that they call in Israel a theory test, where you want to know that the car knows the rule, or the driver of the car knows the rules. In this case, the car itself needs to know the rules. How do we determine that? If we build a robot to do good and have AI, how do we know that it's not evil, that it doesn't hate and want to destroy things? So hopefully we're going to build machines that act like the perfect concierge to accommodate every request as long as it's morally, legally, and robotically possible. So if we're going to do that, we need to understand what the moral code is. So in the moral code, you have three options. I mean, things that are morally right, or things that one should do, things that one should not do, that are wrong, and in between you have things that are neutral, that you can do if you want, you need not do. Famously, Isaac Asimov invented this plot ploy of three laws of robots. So in his first law, he says that a robot may not, by action or inaction, injure or harm a human being. Well, that's somewhat ambiguous. Okay, what do we mean by a robot? When does this machine have autonomy and not just an extension of ourselves? What do we mean by a human? Is a human in a vegetable state a human, for example, for the purpose of this rule? And what do we mean by may not? What do we mean by injure? All these terms need to be defined carefully if we're going to turn them into laws that we need to act upon. So I think what we need is a formal artificial morality. It needs to be formal, based on logic, going back to classical times. It needs to be artificial in the sense that we can put them inside machines, and we need the morality to know what the rules are for right and wrong, good and bad. So we need to engage the philosophers. You see here Aristotle with his book of ethics talking to Plato there. So what are the ethical principles that should guide the behavior of these artifacts that we are now creating? So there's two schools of thought. In the deontological school, you have these absolutes. You have ethical rules such thou shalt not kill. You may have exceptions, like you can kill in self-defense. But in general, you don't care about the consequences of your actions. You follow the rules. Even if many people will die, you're not going to kill. Or you shouldn't stand by the blood of your idly when the blood of your neighbor. That means you shouldn't watch your neighbor see someone injured and not help. But you have a case of triage. You have an accident. Many people are hurt. You need to decide whom to help, whom not. And nowadays, they want to put computers in charge of making these decisions. And so here's a case where we want, again, this old-fashioned AI. We need the experts to tell us, to give us guidelines how to perform triage. So they're different. You might take a first-come, first-serve attitude. The first person, you can help, you need to help. Or do you take the most urgent cases first? Or what's often the case is that you want to help the doctor first, because then the doctor can go help other people. But we need to decide whose blood is redder. and whom are we going to save on a societal basis? Or there's this famous trolley problem in ethics that's now taken on a new life, because we want to put these decisions into our autonomous cars to decide when faced when it's lost its brakes and it's on the way to kill 5 people, should it swerve and kill 1 person? And this actually goes back at the earliest, I know, 1908, where in the university they posed this kind of question: runaway train going to kill hundreds, or your own only child? What do you do? And as a society, if we want to teach our machines to act ethically and morally, we need to decide what moral principles we're going to take on. So Kant's fame, no, sorry. So here, the MIT has this question: well, are all people created? Do you run down the children in the baby carriages, or the mothers, or do you swerve? Do you make choice? Is one person more valuable than another person? But so that conflicts with the universality of morals, what Kant's categorical imperative, that one should follow only those maxims which we can turn into a universal law, that everyone, that doesn't distinguish between one person and another. And if we take that naively, it may mean that you don't lie, don't even lie when lying would save lives. There are no white lies, but that's not really the case. This famous problem of the Paris Motor Show, that this spokesperson for this German car company said that their AI is going to give precedence to the lives of the occupants of the car. And okay, they quickly had to take that back. The German government passed the law that no, all lives are equal. You can't prefer the occupant of the car over other people. But that's a question, or that may be culturally dependent. In the West, most people will say that you can't push someone over in order to kill someone deliberately in order to save even many lives. But on the other hand, in the East, it appears that they see no difference between actively causing death to save lives or passively causing death to save lives. Again, this is a question that needs to be addressed. And for another example, if you have this in-between category with some things that are neither good nor bad, but optional, should I have a setting in my car? If the doctor just told me I have 1 month to live, can I set it? Okay, I will sacrifice my life more readily than on the chance of saving others than I would if I expect to have a long life ahead of me. Okay, the other approach is more utilitarian, and this is probably the approach that society as a whole takes. So that you want to maximize lives, maximize pleasure. This is the pleasure principle. So what we want on the bottom here, the formula for what's best, is to maximize the sum of the likelihood of all the pleasures and how long they last over time. And we can design algorithms to try to make that, to maximize in that way. That's not quite true, because in this research of Tversky and Kahneman, not all pleasure is equal. You only remember the best day of the vacation and the last day of the vacation if it rained. You don't really take the integral of all the pleasure over the whole 2-week vacation. Hence, never take 2-week vacations. 1 week is enough. So we need to, this is an issue that people are still working on. How do you define causality? When do you say the brakes are at fault, and when do you say it's a contributing problem and when not? Not only that, we're not really judging the morality of an action, but rather the morality of the intent. You can have a plan. So in this picture I tried to draw here, the trolley is on its way to kill 1 person. You can switch it now to kill 5 people because you intend to run to the next switch and switch it so you save everybody. So it's your intention, even at the point of turning the first switch, was good, and you calculated that you're likely to be able to reach the second switch, and that's what needs to be judged for morality or not. So what we need now is not just the philosophers and society and the legal system to decide what the rules are, but also get logicians to decide how can we reason about these rules. How do we, in what logic are we going to express them? So I found one book formal ethics, and a few papers here and there. There's far too little done, and I think that the logicians have something to contribute. You need like a second order logic if you want to talk about the universality principle, that the rules don't give preferential treatment to some people over the others. But as Don Knuth said, if you really want to understand something, you need to program it. You need to take your ethical principles and turn them into code that you can test, code that you can reason with. So we want an artificial judge, I think. So this, again, is old-fashioned AI. There were some attempts to design legal principles and program them. So we need a computer scientist to connect the rules with algorithms. How do we check that, in fact, the car keeps to the moral principles? For that, we need transparent software, because computers otherwise can kill. We have this terrible Boeing Max problem due to this lousy design. But the problem is that the computer overtook the pilot. The computer didn't give the pilot in the loop the power to save. So, well, Boeing hasn't released the code, so at least to the world at large. And in general, we have code that's usually wrapped up in these black boxes. And perhaps if we at least get access to the black box, unfettered access to the black box, we can test it. And test it and test it and try to see where it breaks down. For example, that this parole recommendation system has a built-in bias. Okay, we've seen Tesla's accidents. What Elon Musk said is that it's morally wrong not to deploy an autonomous vehicle once we reach the point that it saves more lives than it costs. That's not quite true, because you really want to know what's inside. Is it biased? Is it going to, run over more blacks than whites, or vice versa? And we really, we don't use this in real life. If 1 in a million Tylenol bottles is poisoned with arsenic, we're going to recall them all. We're not going to say it does more good than harm. We also need to know how it came about and what's its guiding principle. So we really, I think, need much more open systems, white boxes, things that we can not only test, but can also reason about, understand what's going on. So when this Toyota acceleration problem, which presumably was contributed by software problems, putting people in a closed room without pencil and paper, they can't take notes, and something to look at how terrible the code was is not the solution. We need to apply formal methods. We need to invest money and regulate the use, I think, of logic and formal methods to check whether software performs as advertised or not. And I hear there's precious little going on in that direction. In hardware, this is already, ever since the Pentium bug, has now become commonplace. Hardware is tested. That doesn't help maybe for poor design, but does help for poor implementations of the design. And there are some cases. In the Paris metro, driverless metro was verified formally using software verification techniques, and we need to do more of that. So again, when this Uber car hit a bicyclist because it mistook the bicycle for something benign, and that's because it had this neural network that decided for some reason that there wasn't a person on the bicycle. Well, we don't want that to cause accidents. And we've already seen, just in Hudi's talk earlier, how you can add a little bit of noise to the picture, and then the neural network thinks that someone looking like that is standing in front of you. That can be done both with a black box neural net and even not necessarily with an open neural net. So we really have, just like the human has two modes of thinking fast, thinking slow, that we have this pattern recognition, that we see things and make quick decisions, often wrong, and we have a rational facility in which we can think and make decisions and plans. And a chess player does that. He sees a pattern, but he also plans the moves. And so what we need is artificial intelligence, both fast and slow, to marry the neural network fantastic abilities now to recognize patterns, together with a slower, rational superego, something standing over it and making sure that it's a fail-safe system, that the decisions are the correct decisions. And this part is certainly amenable to formal methods. So to conclude, I think that we need the philosophers and logicians to formalize ethics and society in the same way. And then critical algorithms need not only to be regulated, but they need to be transparent and formally analyzed. Thank you.